You have walked across a bridge that moved. Not much. A footbridge over a motorway, a river crossing in a city center. A span somewhere you were not really paying attention. It gave slightly under you the way a floorboard does, and something in your legs corrected for it before your brain ever filed a report. That correction is older than you, and it is not conscious. And on one Saturday in London, it very nearly took a bridge apart. On the 10th of June in the year 2000, the Millennium Bridge opened across the Thames. Somewhere between 80 and 100,000 people crossed it that day. 2 days later, it was shut. The story you have probably heard about why is wrong. So is the story you were taught in school about the most famous bridge failure in history. Both of them are wrong in the same way, and the correction is more interesting than either. The answer runs through 2 days in London, a stiff breeze in Washington state, and a scientist who spent 16 years disagreeing with himself. Start with London. The bridge was won in a competition in 1996, over 200 entries by Arup as engineers, Foster and Partners as architects, and the sculptor Anthony Caro. What they built was deliberately, radically flat. A suspension bridge normally hangs in a deep curve. This one has a cable sag of 2.3 meters across its main span, which Arup themselves described as around 6 times shallower than a conventional suspension bridge. A blade of light across the river. That was the point. On opening day, video analysis showed a maximum of about 2,000 people on the deck at once, at a density of 1.3 to 1.5 people per square meter. And the deck began to move sideways, not up and down. This matters, and almost every retelling gets it wrong. There was no excessive vertical vibration at all. The bridge swayed laterally, left-right. Left at frequencies just under half a hertz and around 1 hertz on the central span, about 0.8 on the south. The measured peak acceleration was 200 to 250 milli-g. To translate that out of engineering units, here is the sentence from Arup's own paper. At that acceleration, a significant number of pedestrians began to have difficulty in walking and held onto the balustrades for support. Pedestrian numbers were restricted on the 11th. On the 12th of June, after 2 days of operation, the bridge closed. Now Arup did something admirable here. They did not quietly stiffen it and move on. They studied it, published it, 33 pages in the Structural Engineer in November 2001, and named the phenomenon Synchronous lateral excitation. Their explanation was that it is more comfortable to walk in time with a swaying bridge than to fight it. The bridge moves a little, you adjust. Your adjustment pushes sideways at exactly the rhythm the bridge is already moving at. The bridge moves more. That correction in your legs, the one you never noticed, feeding a structure that is listening. And then Arup wrote the sentence that should have ended any comfortable feeling about this being a one-off. The phenomenon, they said, is not related to the technical innovations of the bridge and could occur on any bridge, with a lateral frequency below about 1.3 hertz loaded with a sufficient number of pedestrians. Not this bridge. Any bridge. They fixed it by damping rather than stiffening. Because stiffening was hopeless, the first central lateral mode sat at 0.49 hertz. And getting clear of pedestrian excitation would have meant roughly tripling that laterally. So instead, 37 viscous dampers and dozens of tuned masses hidden beneath the deck, including 2.5-ton weights swinging on double pendulums with a steel paddle dragging through a pod of viscous fluid. They tested it with 100 people in July 2000 and 275 that December. So bridge wobbles, engineers diagnose it, engineers fix it, engineers publish. A good story about a profession working properly, except for the part where the profession already knew. Buried in Arup's own paper is a section on other bridges. The north section of the Auckland Harbour Road Bridge, New Zealand, 1975, a road bridge. Lateral frequency 0.67 Hz, moved sideways. When somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 demonstrators crossed a closed section during a protest. Arup obtained the New Zealand television news film of it. The Grove Suspension Bridge in Chester, 1977, during a river regatta. The Link Bridge at Birmingham's National Exhibition Centre, built in 1978, lateral frequency 0.7 Hz, which swayed when crowds left pop concerts. 3 documented cases across 25 years, and Arup's verdict on all of them verbatim, in all of the above cases. The phenomenon was not fully researched or analyzed, and its occurrence was not widely disseminated within the engineering profession. It was not that nobody had seen it. It was that nobody had written it down where it counted. Which brings us to the thing you were taught. If you sat through a physics class, you met resonance, and you almost certainly met it through a bridge. Push a swing at its natural rhythm, and it climbs. Sing the right note at a wine glass, and it shatters. And then in the textbook, a black and white film, a bridge deck rolling like a ribbon. One lane rising far above the other, until it tears itself apart and falls into the water. Tacoma Narrows, the 7th of November, 1940. Galloping Gertie. It is probably the most watched piece of engineering film ever shot, and it has been used to teach forced resonance to generations of students. It is not forced resonance. In 1991, Yusuf Billah and Robert Scanlan published a paper in the American Journal of Physics with a title that tells you exactly how annoyed they were. Resonance, Tacoma Narrows Bridge Failure, and undergraduate physics textbooks. Their argument is that physics texts present the collapse as elementary forced resonance, with the wind supplying an external periodic push that happens to match the bridge's natural frequency, and that engineers' understanding differs fundamentally. What actually destroyed the bridge, they said, was an aerodynamically induced condition of self-excitation, or negative damping, in a torsional degree of freedom. Forced resonance and self-excitation, they wrote, are fundamentally different phenomena, both physically and mathematically. That was 35 years ago. The Washington State Department of Transportation, which owns the crossing and keeps the archive, independently names the cause as torsional flutter and defines flutter as a self-induced harmonic vibration pattern. So what is the difference, and why does it matter enough to publish an angry paper about it? Forced resonance needs an outside rhythm. Something pushes you over and over at the frequency you happen to like. You are safe as long as you avoid that one frequency. Self-excitation has no outside rhythm at all. The structure's own motion creates the force that drives the structure. The deck twists, and the twisting deck generates the aerodynamic force that twists it further. The damping term, the part of the system that is supposed to bleed energy away and calm things down, flips sign. The bridge stops resisting itself and starts amplifying itself. And that changes what safety even means. Under forced resonance, you avoid a frequency. Under self-excitation, there is no frequency to avoid. There is a threshold, a wind speed, or a number of people, below which nothing happens at all, and above which the response grows and keeps growing. Which explains the detail about that November morning that nobody puts in the textbook. The wind was 38 miles an hour at 7:30. 42 miles an hour 2 hours later. That is a stiff breeze. It is weather you would walk to work in. WS. notes that vortex shedding normally happens at low wind speeds, 25 to 35 miles an hour. And torsional flutter at high ones, around 100. Galloping Gertie was so slender, with an 8-foot solid plate girder along her sides instead of an open truss, that the two regimes touched. She went from one straight into the other in ordinary weather. The construction workers had nicknamed her Galloping Gertie before she ever opened. because the deck moved in the wind from the day it was built. She carried traffic for 4 months. Leonard Coatsworth, news editor of the Tacoma News Tribune, was driving across when it began, with his daughter's Cocker Spaniel Tubby in the car. From the eyewitness account in the state archive, around me I could hear concrete cracking. I started back to the car to get the dog, but was thrown before I could reach it. He crawled, by his own account, 500 yards or more on his hands and knees, gripping the concrete curb, and watched from the toll plaza as his car went into the Narrows. No person died at Tacoma. Tubby did. And the line Coatsworth left behind is the one that stays with you, with real tragedy. Disaster and blasted dreams all around me. I believe that right at this minute, what appalls me most is that within a few hours I must tell my daughter that her dog is dead, when I might have saved him. So the textbook is wrong about Tacoma. Fine. We have a better explanation now, and London got its own explanation in 2001, and the profession moves forward. Except that in 2005, the London explanation got a much more famous upgrade. And in 2021, that upgrade fell over too. The 2005 version came from Stephen Strogatz and colleagues in Nature, and it is beautiful, crowd synchrony. The idea that the walkers on the bridge behave like coupled oscillators and spontaneously fall into lockstep once the crowd passes a critical size. Wobble and synchrony emerging together as two faces of one instability. It is elegant, it is mathematical, and it is the version that made it into every popular retelling. Human beings unconsciously marching in time. You have almost certainly heard this one. In December 2021, a team spanning Georgia State, Bristol, Cambridge, Leicester, and Rocklaw published in Nature Communications. Their abstract states it plainly: the London Millennium Bridge is a widely used example of Kuramoto synchronization, and yet reviewing the observational, experimental, and modeling evidence. They argue that the increased coherence of pedestrians' foot placement is a consequence of, not a cause of, the instability. The wobble does not need you to march in step. Uncorrelated walkers, people out of time with each other, still produce negative damping on average. And the evidence that breaks the lockstep picture is almost funny in how ordinary it is. The best video-based estimate they cite found only about 20% of the crowd walking in time with the bridge. 4 out of 5 people were out of step. The bridge moved anyway. Professor Alan Champneys of Bristol put it this way: sometimes the answer is hiding in plain sight. But the wisdom of the crowd has led for many years to an incorrect explanation. And here is the detail that makes this human rather than academic. Alan McRoby is an author on the 2005 Synchrony paper. He is also an author on the 2021 paper arguing that synchrony is a consequence rather than a cause. The same scientist, 16 years apart, publicly revising himself. Because it kept happening. The 2021 paper tabulates 14 documented cases, and several of them predate London entirely. Erlach in Germany, 1972. Toda Park Bridge in Japan, 1993, which is where that 20% figure comes from. A footbridge in Paris in 1999, the year before London opened. Lardal in Norway in 2001, where just 40 pedestrians produced over a meter per second squared. Clifton Suspension Bridge in 2003. Pedro e Ini Circumflex in Coimbra, Portugal, in 2006, with a documented critical threshold of 73 people. Cragside in the UK, also 2006, where the number was 9. 9 people. This is not a rare event that befell one unlucky flat bridge in London. It is a property of long spans and human legs, and it has been quietly recurring for 50 years, while the explanation for it was rewritten twice. Be careful about what we are actually claiming, though, because the honest version is better than the tidy one. What is settled about Tacoma is the negative, It was not forced resonance driven by periodic vortex shedding. What replaced it is still argued over. There are papers refining the vortex and flutter picture. And there is a nonlinear structural model that concludes the failure was neither resonance nor pure aeroelasticity. A paper in 2022 treats the transition from vertical to twisting motion as an open question. 85 years on from the most filmed structural failure in history, we are confident about what did not happen and still working on what did. That is not a failure of engineering. That is what knowing something actually looks like from the inside. So tomorrow you will cross a bridge and it will move slightly and your legs will correct for it. You will not think about the fact that the correction is a force, that it goes into the structure and that the structure is capable of listening. That the difference between a bridge that absorbs your footstep and one that answers it is not a rule you could see by looking, but a threshold, a number of people, a speed of wind with nothing on one side of it and everything on the other. You will cross and nothing will happen, because 37 dampers or an open truss or a lateral frequency, 1.3 Hertz, is quietly holding the line on your behalf. Late at night, the Millennium Bridge is empty. It is a flat blade of light across the Thames, and it is completely still. It took 2 days of walking, 21 months of work, one wrong answer in every textbook, and a second wrong answer that took 16 years to catch to make it that boring.